Good morning and welcome to Unraveled Beer Thoughts. And we've got not really a tasting, but more of a review of a tasting that I had recently. One is a probably relatively unheard of brewery from Midland, Texas. And not too many months ago, we took a little trip down there, me and a couple of friends, and we got some special beers. One of them was this double bourbon barrel aged FMJ Stout, aged in Willet bourbon barrels. And we drank this the other day, and it was enjoyable. Had it to do over again, I would save this for another year. I think it felt a little too green, and this was still, I think it was brewed in this last year. It's a 12.5% uh, uh, Imperial Stout, double barrel aged. So I think that another year on this, maybe two, to mellow it out would have been fantastic. I will say that if you're ever going through Midland, Texas, you have to stop at the Eccentric Brewing Company. It is an underrated, practically unknown brewery that is in Midland, Texas, and they have a lot of really good beer down there. In fact, I would highly recommend their brown ale. I cannot remember what it was called, but it was a brown ale and it was made with chocolate. I think it's called Marabea Chocolate. It sounds like it's going to be a stout, but it's a brown ale, and it is perhaps the best brown ale I have ever had in my life. It was very, very good, and I'd highly recommend it. Now, to pair with the FMJ, we very unfairly drank a 2019 Parabola. Is that 2021 Parabola. So this one also was not aged as well as probably it would have been beneficial to age it. But Parabola is always very good. Again, this one was kind of green. I would generally like 2 to 3, maybe 4 years on a Parabola for it to be right at what I think is going to be its best tasting profile. But they were both good beers, and we were playing a fun game, Viscounts of the West Kingdom, when we drank those beers and enjoyed them both. So, Firestone Walker Parabola and Eccentric Brewing Company FMJ Stout. Today, I have a beer that falls into the realm of, how do I describe this? Every once in a while, I'm in a store and I'm looking for a beer, and I see some, I'm like, oh, I like Russian Imperial Stouts. I like Imperial Stouts. It's probably my favorite class of beer, or style of beer, rather. I mean, I like all styles of beer in their season, but the Yeti is my favorite beer. If I'm picking a favorite beer, that's probably my favorite. I'm not gonna say that's the best beer I've ever had in my life. That's just my favorite to have on a regular basis. So I'm in one of our local beer shops, and I see a Russian Imperial Stout for like, it was like 280 or something. I mean, it was dirt cheap. And I think it's fine. I've run across some beers in my past that I'll see them on a discount shelf and pick them up, and they turn out to be absolutely fantastic. That isn't always the case. I've had a few that I've bought that were just absolutely terrible. For the same, they were not great beers. But this one I found called a Baltica Brew, or is it Baltica Brew Collection Russian Imperial Stout. Looks like it's got a signature on here by a Dmitry Afonin, brewmaster of Baltica Breweries in St. Petersburg. So it comes from Russia, I think. And 10% ABV, Russian Imperial Stout, and it's a Russian craft. Our modern perusal of the authentic historical style, St. Petersburg, smell of London casks traveling through Baltic Sea in a soup can of American craft accent. Whatever that means. That almost sounds like it was making fun of American craft. Phenomenal, rich and dense with unforgettable Venus tones. It rocked Imperial City already now it starts kicking around the world. I think there were some translation issues there, if I'm guessing. But it sounds interesting. 280. It's a Russian Imperial Stout, and I figure why not? Let's see. We'll do a little pour here. So I noticed that it's brown in color, which is interesting. I think most Russian Imperial Stouts I tend to drink tend to be black. If you think of the Yeti is like motor oil black. But that's not a knock on it. That's just duly noted. The head seems a little thin to me, from what I can tell. Uh, that's just again, not 100% knock. And now I'm holding it to, there's an open window next to me here, and I mean, you can't see through it. It's thick. So we'll see. Hmm. It definitely has a unique flavor. I'm trying to place if that's is that an unfiltered? I kind of think if they sat it in casks all the way over here and it was wooden casks, then I'm betting I'm getting a little bit of that wood flavor in there because it's kind of that, it's almost like an astringent sort of flavor, but not alcohol astringent, just some astringency. Is there a year on this? We can see when it was made. I don't see a year. So I could be just missing it, but I don't see anything. So no idea when it was brewed. There's the cap. I don't see anything on the cap. Sometimes there might be something on the bottle, but I don't see anything. So no idea when this was brewed. It it has a cleanish taste to it. I mean, it's full bodied. There's some body there. Not as chocolatey as most of the American Russian Imperial Stouts. Like the Yeti has a lot more chocolate. This almost has a Doppelbock feel to it. If I was tasting this blindly, I would have thought this was a Doppelbock. Um, Now, this is a Russian brewery brewing a Russian Imperial Stout. And it could be that, I don't know where that style, if that style was actually ported from Russia, or if in America we called, I don't know the history of the tag Russian Imperial Stout. It could be a brew style that America tagged, and now Russia is sort of, I got to decline a call here, is sort of, they're like saying, oh, here's our Russian Imperial Stout. This is how we think this should really taste. But it definitely has some heat on the end. I would argue that at 10%, I've had beers that I didn't feel the heat quite as much. So that's not to say it's poorly brewed. That's not to say it's bad. It's not a bad beer. And I'd say at the price point, I'd buy a 6-pack of this probably. Because it'd be a pretty hefty winter beer. It lacks some of the depth and flavor and complexity that I find in other Russian Imperial Stouts. And I like the sort of chocolate coffee notes that Yeti employs. And I would say even a Old Rasputin has a lot more, I think, coffee notes to it, and a little bit of you get some of that burnt toast flavor in it, and I really like that. And this does not hit this. This is all. I would be interesting to compare this with Doppelbocks. Now I think Doppelbocks would be actually smoother because theoretically this is an ale, and a Doppelbock would be a bock. So it's going to be a lager by nature if I'm not mixing my styles up. And this is almost like a Doppelbock that is an ale instead of a lager. Um, but not uncomfortably slow. It's not bad. It doesn't have off flavors per se. It's just a. I think that barreling, if it sat in barrels on the ocean for a while, it has a little bit of a tinge of wood flavor to that, but not necessarily the oaked flavor that I'm used to most things having. I think this is probably a more typical barrel, which the Venus notes, I guess that's what it almost has a Venus note to it, where it tastes like it might have been on a wine barrel that was either really well aged, had been used multiple times for beer, or something else. Like it just was most of the flavors were wiped out of it, and it's just the residual wood flavors and from sitting in there so long. So that is from the Baltica Brew Collection, Russian Imperial Stout. Was there even a brewery? It just says St. Petersburg. Brewmaster Baltica Brew St. Petersburg. So I guess it's just whatever brewery, Baltica Brew in St. Petersburg. So maybe there's just one brewery in St. Petersburg that makes the Baltica beer, and that's it. You would think there'd be more. It's I think, a fairly large city. But yeah, thanks for joining me today at Unraveled Beer Thoughts. If you have comments, post them below. If you've had this beer before, or you've had other beers from this brewery, I'd love to hear about it. See if there's any others you'd recommend. And I hope you have a great afternoon.